Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Gallant Few Rangers podcast. My name's Colin MacDuff and I'll be your host as always. Today I'm delighted to be joined by the gentleman behind the Founders Thrill, the story of the formation of our club brought to life. A very, very warm welcome to the show. First of all, Gordon Bell. How are you, Gordon?
I'm fine, thanks. It's great to chat to you during the afternoon when it's a holiday.
Yeah, I hope I've not ruined your bank holiday Monday plans too much.
No, not doing anything, thanks.
Perfect. And of course, Mr. Iain McColl. Iain, again, thanks for coming on, and how are you doing?
Yeah, doing great, Colin. Thanks very much for having us on. It's an absolute pleasure for us. Thanks very much.
So, again, thanks for coming on. Really is my pleasure to be speaking to you both. Before we get into the Founders Tale itself, just want to ask you, I don't suppose you'll mind talk about present affairs as well. I don't know how much you'll get to talk about what's going on nowadays in the tour, but have you enjoyed the last 12 months? Obviously, off the back of 55, and we're now chasing 56. Gordon, I'll start with you. How's it been for yourself the last year?
Absolutely amazing. It's been, if you thought before COVID and stuff like that we were going to win the league so easily, and the effects of winning the league, you couldn't really dream of that. It was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You know, the only thing was no getting into the games, but again, I sacrificed that to win the league. We had to win that league this year.
No, totally. It was almost bittersweet. It was waited a long time for that. At least we did get to see it on the telly. That's a very small consolation. It's good to be back in the games already, back to full capacity. Iain, what about yourself?
Yeah, it was stuff that dreams are made of. You know, and again, not just going back to the founders, but the birth of the club with the 150th year looming large. It was just absolutely fantastic that we're going to get into that 150th year as champions, and I felt that was vitally important. You know, because obviously the club had a lot of plans, you know, for celebrations, and I just felt if the league had went again last season, you know, it's, you know what I mean, I kind of had a watered down effect on it, if you like, but no, it's been absolutely fantastic, thoroughly deserved, you know, and it was brilliant to see Rangers coming together and playing the football that we hoped the guys were capable of, you know, but no, it was wonderful. But just to reiterate what Gordon says, you know, it was bittersweet with not getting actually into the games. You know, that final trounce on a Celtic at the end of the season, and the trophy, it would have been incredible to be there that day. But the most important thing, of course, was we won the league and got 55 tied up, Colin.
Oh, totally agree with you. And I think it was 2019 at one of the AGMs, one of the directors, the line was the two most important numbers in the coming years are 55 and 150. So yeah, it's really nice. We got 55 over the line, so it's almost that kind of fairy tale coming together, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. It couldn't have failed. It couldn't have failed any better, you know. And it's very, very fitting. You know, as I said, that we're going to get into next year. We're 150 years as champions of the country. So back in my rightful place, as they say.
And long may it continue.
Yeah. Do we need to thank Peter Lawwell for that? I'm sure he's held back.
I mean, that's time again. I said it would have been Celtic would have had to have been very, very good and a very, very well run club last season to match Rangers, but they certainly made it a lot easier for us.
Yeah,
definitely.
So in saying that, you know, I think the style of football, you know, and the drive and determination shown by the squad, it would have taken something exceptional to stop Rangers last season. I mean, let's not take anything away from your guys. It's they were absolutely brilliant for the first whistle, straight through. Even the European stage, they handled that Thursday Sunday scenario extremely well. So I would have taken something exceptional to stop us last season. You know, I thought they were brilliant.
I think as well that Celtic never really had any pressure the years previous to that. We sort of fell apart the year before, and this was the first year we sustained that pressure, and he just crumbled, totally crumbled at that point.
No, I told you every year under Gerrard up until 55, we were putting Celtic on. We were putting the pressure on Celtic maybe up until Christmas or January. And I think the majority of fans are saying, right, let's see how Celtic cope with this pressure if Rangers keep the foot in the throat and just keep chasing them. But we didn't manage to do that consistently the previous years.
Yeah, I can remember saying that to my son exactly a year ago. I said, honestly, I said all we need is a good 5 or 6 wins underneath our belt, straight wins, and we just see how they react, because we've never been in that kind of position before. You know, he really turned the heat up on them, and I actually just repeated that. Those exact words to him sitting there watching the Dundee game at the weekend there. You know, I feel we're in the exact same position. You know, it's been a kind of stop-start season so far, and I honestly feel, you know, and again, yeah, some of it is to do with what's going on across there. But if we could just get those 5 or 6 wins under our belt, we would pull away. We would pull away for the pack easily. You know, and hopefully that's the way it'll pan out.
Yeah, I'm just putting down our start to the season. It's fairly slow, but top of the league. I'm putting that fairly slow start to the season, but we're keeping ourselves for the business end. I
hope so.
I'm quite confident with that. But without further ado, then. Let's go on to the Founders Trail itself. I'd be really surprised if there's anyone listening who hasn't at least heard of the Founders Trail, let alone been on it. But for the avoidance of doubt, Gordon, I'll come to you first. But without giving too much away, what does the Founders Trail entail? And how much of the Rangers story do you actually tell?
Well, basically, we kind of plot the kind of, not just the boys, but the kind of history of the club as well. We actually go in sequence where they played, Kinnan Park, Burnbank, and you know what I mean. So everything goes in order, and it obviously ends up in Craigton Cemetery. But it does deal. It tells you the kind of the lives. It gives you a better picture of the 4 boys that kind of formed the club, and also Tom Valentin as well, because he was also a very important person. But it just gives you a wee idea of what it's like. Because I actually said to someone yesterday, I always like to chat to people on the way out of Craigton, on the way to Ibrox and back to the bus, how they feel about the tour. And obviously it's hard to get a negative comment. We never get any. But I just say to them, do you feel differently about the club? And every one of them always say yes, they do. They've got a better understanding of the start of the club and the boys that were there at the beginning. You know.
So is it just going into the very early years that will change how people feel about the club, or is it maybe just maybe snippets, unknown facts that they've never really thought about, or maybe really didn't understand where the club came from? Or
my thoughts on it, Colin, are is what we do is these guys were basically black and white pictures in a book. You know, old dusty history books, and through the course of researching their story, we're not obviously not bringing them back to life, but it's giving people an insight into the hurdles and obstacles that they faced, and it's very much the same as we're facing today. You know, it's just to try and to make that connection. You know, and again, and it's important to us to make the connection that the club didn't really start under Bill Struth. You know, Bill Struth paid his own tribute to the boys that formed the club, you know, and the very fact that we cover during the tour the ages of them, you know, that 1877 team picture, the one we're sitting with the white top with the star on, that's kind of printed in people's minds. But the fact was, the boys were 15 and 16-year-old when they formed the club. They were working at the time, so people will always say, you know, and that was one of the questions I asked myself: why Rangers? Why was it no Queen's Park? Why not Partick Thistle? But some of the things that we began to find through the research was articles that were written by guys that were around at the time, and they were talking about them going down to Fleshers Hall and places like Burnbank and training 6 nights a week. It wasn't enough just for Rangers, this young Rangers team, to compete. This young Rangers team wanted to be the best at what they were doing. They were determined to be the best version of themselves. Nothing's changed in 150 years. I'm beginning to sound like Steven Gerrard there, but that's exactly what those boys' philosophy was, and that's what we're really keen to get across. You know, and it's just that whole mix and that whole story is, I'm confident that's what people come back to us and say, now I understand, you know, why Rangers are different and why they push forward so quickly in those early years, you know, and that's what we're really keen to get across.
You'd be forgiven for any major football club to find that chance was a big part in their success and throughout the years, and you know, once they start winning early on, it's just they keep on building that dominance. But that's a completely different point of view for what you're saying there. That these guys, these lads, that's the song, the four lads, and they are 15, 16 years old. They're set up to go in for success. It's more than just a hobby.
That's right. They were right into Queen's Park. Queen's Park were the top club at the time. You know, the Queen's Park team was basically the Scotland team. They were right into Queen's Park and asking them to send their best team down to Fletcher's Hall. They wanted to play a game in Queen's Park, kind of hummed and hawed, and then said, no, you haven't got your own ground, but we'll send down our second 11. And the Rangers boys were really insulted with us. You know, and there was a lot of clubs that were formed. The new sport of association football grabbed everyone's imagination. There was clubs springing up all over the place, but a lot of clubs went to the wall very quickly. But Rangers survived, and we believe that was the reason they survived, because these guys kept working at it, kept pushing Rangers forward, you know, and we really have got a lot to thank them for. And we believe that the Founders Trail gives people the opportunity to do that, you know.
You're right. We do have a lot to thank. 150 years worth of thanks goes to these guys.
Yeah.
So, Founders Trail, first tour was in August 2009, and since then you've had, I'm just taking this for your website, over 6,000 fans join the tour. So, how did it come about that you guys started the tour?
Well, we're actually need to update the website, because we're now sitting. I actually took a couple of notes there during the week and kind of rough count the tours and etc. So we're actually sitting just about 11,000 now. People that were skating around since 2009. So that's one for Gordon while he's on here.
I'm taking notes to do. You update that.
The website's going to be updated. So yeah. So sorry, what were you saying there, Colin? Just before I interrupted you. Sorry about that.
I know. So how did it come about that you guys started this tour? And I think I don't know if this needs update for the website as well, but I think the paragraph, the second paragraph in about your first tour, it sounded as if it just ended up in a pub crawl. Is that right?
Yeah, the first one was a walk tour. To take it back a wee bit further, I'd always had we both had a burning curiosity in our minds, actually since children. Again, going back to talking about those old black and white dusty Rangers history books, and I can remember clearly asking my dad and one of my uncles, what happened to these guys? You know, I was handed that book, Rangers A New Year. It was a fantastic read, and there was one or two others, but again, there was only a couple of paragraphs on these boys at the start, and then it very quickly jumps to William Walton, and then the story quickly jumps to Bill Struth, you know, and I can remember asking my dad, and I could never get an answer. So it was one of those things that was kind of burning away at the back of my mind, and I got myself onto the internet in about 2005 and started digging into their story and posting wee snippets around Rangers supporters' websites at the time. And Gordon picked up on that. He contacted me. That was in July of 2007 and said, look, I've got an avid interest in this as well. Would you like to compare notes? And we'd done that over a pint in the old Glaswegian bar, in fact it was. And we continued to research and continued to post. And it was then Gary Ralston had seen what we were doing on Follow and other places, and came and said, look, I've been watching what you're doing. I've been researching the story as well, and it's my aim to pull it all together and put it into a book. Now, but by this point, some of our fellow supporters had been saying, is there any way you could kind of take us round about Glasgow in a formulated fashion and show us where some of these places are? And I was like, no, how are we going to do that? So anyway, the crazy idea of doing a walking tour came to mind, and as you quite rightly said, but that was the August of 2009. A few is gathered at Fletcher's Hall, and we took them along the Clydeside and up through the city centre. But it was too much. It was too much on the legs. You know, there was a couple of kind of elderly guys there, and they were beginning to struggle. And we jumped on the underground system, and up to the West End, and then we thought we'd have a refreshment break in a pub, and that kind of brought the day to an end prematurely, you know. And I had employment history with the bus industry, and I knew the guy in Glasgow at the time who was responsible for running the city sightseeing tour buses. So I approached him, and I said, look, we've done this walk tour, but a logical step to take on an open top bus. What do you think? And he says, right, I'll give you one, but it can't be this open top bus running about the city centre full of rowdy football supporters. I said, no. I'll be more refined than that. Let us do one. Just let us do one, please. And they let us do one, and it sold out. And then we came up with the idea, if we were starting our story at Fletcher Court, it'd be wonderful to finish off with a tour of Ibrox Stadium. And it would also give the club something in return, you know, if we brought the passengers or the supporters through the door. So we met with Sandy Jardine. Sandy said, yeah, go for it, let's do it. And to cut a long story short, we've never looked back. It just absolutely snowballed from there, you know. So that was the way it came about.
The open deck bus years, they were a bit of a laugh as well, because we were selling out the whole bus, so you've got like almost half the bus uncovered in Glasgow where there's never really that. And it was like, I feel like the day before the tour, praying for good weather. We actually used to buy in ponchos and give them out and stuff like that when we're upstairs. I can actually remember one time where we stopped at Partick bus station to do the West of Scotland cricket ground, and by the time we get back to the bus, it had been snowing. So to be up there scraping snow off the seats for the guys to come back and sit down. Those were the days.
Honestly, it was incredible that we stuck with it so long, you know. But it was obviously because of the demand. It was always in my mind that the biggest coach I could get would be a 53-seat coach, whereas the open top bus took almost 70. So we just continued, but then it was ridiculous. There was people absolutely soaked to the skin before we'd even left Ibrox, you know. That was the change when the club changed hands in 2015. We met with the club director Graham Park. Obviously, he's the son of Douglas, and he knew who we were and what we were doing, etc. And he says, so why are parts of Hamilton doing this? And I said, because the biggest you can give him is a 53-seat coach. And he said, no, I've got a 70-seat coach. I says, right, show me this coach. And that was it. 2015. We now got the luxury of the Parts Hamilton coach, and they're all complaining now because it's too warm.
You can't win, can you? So it's been good to see how engaging the club have been with us throughout. Also, other than the obvious positive of the coach and finishing with the Ibrox tour, how much has the tour benefited with a connection with Rangers? Is that supported I'd imagine research is ongoing for this. Have they given you any support with that kind of stuff?
Gordon said the research. Gordon, I'll back up. Back up. The research has been done on our own, you know, and Gary Ralston also done a lot of it. It's not that we keep our distance. We do our own thing. You know, you probably find it's more the club will come to us and run things by us, rather than us going to the club and trying to get information from them. You know, so it's very much Gordon spends hours upon hours up in the Mitchell Library, and other places, you know, constantly researching the story. And every now and again, a wee snippet will come to us, you know, and a door will open, and we're off and running. But I'm sure you get Gordon's thoughts on that as well.
Don't get us wrong as well. The club have given us access to the minute books that they have, which is fantastic. You know what I mean? That alone it helps piecing together like jigsaws. A lot of times you're doing research, you're looking for something to back up something that you found.
And a lot of credit for that has to go to the late great Sandy Jardine. Sandy was incredible. He actually had these minute books in his office, and we'd heard mention of their existence. And he said, absolutely no problem. And I think it was a Monday afternoon. And he said, I'm going to go on Monday, but I'll leave the key to the office for you. And we're looking at each other going, is this for real? You know? And the information we got from those minute books, going to be back to the 1880s, was absolutely incredible, because every meeting that they had, they would list the committee members and, more importantly, their address, where they were living. So that helped us to expand the Founders Trail, pointing out where Tom Balance lived, etc. And Moses and obviously the others, you know. So Sandy was an absolutely incredible help, you know.
Not just as that as well. The addresses are definitely important so that you can actually get the correct person when you research there. I do a lot of stuff in Ancestry as well, and you get your hints and all that for there. If you've got the right address, you've got the right person, you can then trace them to when they died and where they're buried, and go and find out where their graves were and stuff like that, you know. So the addresses are always important for the research part.
Wow, so that's a hidden gem there for you. Sandy Jardine unlocked for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
The years before that, the years before 2015, were extremely difficult. There was nobody there. We'll all know the people were in that club. The people were in that club for one reason and one reason only, and that was to drain Rangers of all resources, obviously, including the financial side of it. It was an absolute nightmare. But when the club changed hands, you know, people like Graham Park, you know, John Bennett, who were very fortunate to meet, said anything you need at all, just chap the door and it's there for you, you know, which was absolutely brilliant, you know. And it's we know that the boardroom, it's Rangers supporters in the boardroom now, you know, but again we just crack on and do our own thing, you know, and that's just the way we work.
They did for a few seasons as well. They put our advert on the main boards, screens at Ibrox. That was invaluable as well. They even allowed us to put our adverts up in the concourses and the toilets. That was one of the highlights of that season, was to run around Ibrox ourselves, putting up posters. They gave us free rein, run around the whole grounds, you know.
Yeah, I mean the board of directors took the Founders Trail with us. You know, and as we say during the commentary, you know, we highlighted how important it is. It's the torch that they're now carrying that was lit in Fleshers Hall, and then with 32 office staff a couple of months after that, office staff from all departments within the club, we took them around as well, you know, and it was all just about showing them why Rangers are special and how the job that they're doing is special, you know. So that was important to us as well, you know. But that was a door we kept chapping until that happened, you know. So we work closely with them, you know.
That's amazing to hear that the club directors and the admin staff and stuff, they've taken the tour, because I think something that's been really prominent over the last 3, 4, 5 years, that the club have been heading towards a direction of unity. Is certainly what we felt this year, and it's strange when we're talking about the start of this show where it was bittersweet that we weren't being able to go in and celebrate with the club winning 55, but you still feel a connection. And I think that's been up and down the club, and that's definitely no accident. It's it's gestures like this, going and seeing the Founders Trail and really understanding where the club came from. Yeah, you know, there's wonderful wee snippets we put out, you know, about the club president Tom Valance at the time when we moved to First Ibrox, and that it was not unusual for the club president Valance to be working the turnstiles on match day. You know, we're putting that across and then turning and looking at them and saying, so it's new down to use, you know, and it got a laugh on the day, you know. But no, listen, believe me, they're 100% fully aware that torch they're carrying now, you know. So Tom Valance, he's came up a couple of times, and that is somebody I'm really looking forward to when I go on the tour. With the rest of the guys, and disclaimer, folks, I'm the only one for the podcast that's not been on the tour, so apologies.
Shocking.
But Tom Valance is, I know, terrible. I've got an absolute asking you on. But Tom Valance is somebody I'm really, really keen to hear more about. Particularly, I'm a regular in the Viceroy. But how much a part does he play in the story of Rangers' early years?
Massive. Tom Valance was massive. If you ask me or Ian who our hero is, it's Tom Valance. The guy, apart from being 6'2" at a time where your average height was 5'7", so he was a colossus a guy anyway. But he was definitely a driving force with the club, and he was well loved. You know, he was a fantastic all round character. Do you know what I mean?
The Viceroy's a brilliant link. Colin, you know, that was his club restaurant back in 1890, and the beauty of Valance's story is he was very much hands-on, you know, right from the start, and he had the joy of being there in Fleshers Hall. He came along a year later in 1873, but he had the joy of being there in Fleshers Hall, and then 60 years later as a guest of the club for the New Year's Day game against Celtic in 1933. So he's seen a full Ibrox Stadium, crowds almost touching 100,000. He's seen it all, you know, and he's also a guest of Mr. Truth for that game, and that was another game, the Sporting Club of Vienna we played. He was a guest again that year, so it must have been incredible for him to sit in that director's box and look round about him, you know, from being the 15, 16-year-old kid back at Fleshers Hall. So again, people will say, you know, it's Rangers and what an incredible club and a family club, and this is another perfect example of why we are, you know.
There's a great wee story we tell in the tour about the Viceroy. Well, obviously, when it was the club, 1883, we were playing Celtic in the final at Hampden, but they weren't fancied at all. Celtic were the kind of heavy favourites, and the local supporters gathered around the restaurant waiting to hear the result. And this what they called an urchin sprinted back for Hampden, got there, and they said the result was 3-1. Nobody believed him, so they started set about him. And he was here to say, straight with you indeed if it's not true. Rangers have beat Celtic, sort of thing, you know. So that just wee stories like that, right outside the pub that you go to before the games. You know,
it's incredible call to think, you know. I mean, that was maybe also way back before radio and television had been invented, and that's what would happen. The fans, the supporters would gather outside the restaurant and wait for a runner coming from Hampden to tell them the score. It's just astonishing.
It's
astonishing. Yeah.
Really is. So you've mentioned about like how proactive you are we try to put funds back into the club through the tour, whether that's the Ibrox tour itself, or I know we spoke beforehand about you know, getting match day tickets for raffles, that kind of stuff. But as well as that, the funds raised for the tour go towards quite a few side projects. Most notably the restorations of Rangers graves. I think that's a wonderful cause, and imagine that will be an ongoing thing. But how much of an impact have you managed to have there?
Yeah, well, just before we move on to that, it's what you quite rightly said about the stadium tour, the funds getting back into the club. What we also do is we purchase, well, there used to be the stadium bricks, it's now paving stones. I think they've actually run out of space. We purchase the paving stones from the Rangers Youth Development Company, and we raffle one of those off every tour that we run. So the money that comes into that goes back into the club through the youth development, and we also with a batch of the Rangers in Russia books, which we got from Colin Stewart as well, and they're used as a raffle prize, and the money from that goes back into the Players Benevolent Fund. So the passengers that take the tour, their money is constantly being generated, going back into the club. That's important to us. But yeah, the restoration of Rangers Graves project, again, that came about through our research. It was natural to follow these guys' stories to a conclusion, and unfortunately we started finding more and more of them lying, if they weren't in unmarked graves, then it was the graves where the stone was broken, it was lying face down, or needed cleaned and re-lettered, and we launched that back in 2014. It was actually the McNeil plot, and the McNeil's and the Struth plot across at Creighton Cemetery that kick-started it. We found Peter McNeil and one of his brothers lying in an unmarked grave, and Mr. Struth's stone was looking the worse for wear. So we thought it would be an idea to put out an appeal to the worldwide range of support, and it will surprise no one that the fund in large amounts, and that let us kick-start the restoration of a Rangers Graves project. Since then, there's been people donating things such as signed jerseys, which we go and get framed and then put them up for raffle. Bottles of whiskey. There's been sponsored walks, everything, you know. And again, it's just the range support rallying round to help the project, and it's been fantastic. And that's 63 plots that we've restored, and we've also managed to help 33 of the Ibrox disaster families. It extended into that. We'd found the final resting place of our boy George Nelson at Creighton Cemetery, He was one of two boys that were killed in the 61 accident. The 50th anniversary of that just passed. They actually had George Nelson's family, the club, George Nelson's family in before the Leon game for some hospitality, etc., and laid flowers at the statue to mark the event. So it naturally extended into helping those bereaved by the Ibrox disaster. So what again? We've put in new stones. A lot of the guys that lost their lives that day were cremated. We've managed to put plaques at some of the crematoriums around Glasgow, and we've restored a couple of benches. Memorial benches, one to Margaret Ferguson. She was the only female that died that day, and one for the 5 boys up in Markinch. So it's very much still ongoing. Yeah, but we have restored the plots of past presidents and chairmen and players, but it's now extended into helping our fellow supporters, which is important.
I think that's an amazing project to have, and I didn't actually realise it extended into for supporters and supporting supporters' families. So I think I speak on behalf and everyone and saying that's an amazing job that you guys are doing through this.
Okay.
It's rewarding, when you can actually help people that have been bereaved by the Ibrox disaster. And it's not just the work that's been done in the plot. It's just to remind these folk, that they haven't been forgotten. It's we're the next generation, but the generations will come after us, and that will let their families then have somewhere to go and pay their respects. Whereas before there was nothing. And in the actual cemeteries, there's also the statue there at Ibrox. But it's let them do it on a kind of personal level, if you like. But again, it's only possible, Colin, because of the donations that have come in from the Worldwide Range Support. If there's no donations had come in, then we would have struggled. Again, I just said yesterday to the group at Creighton, it would be the easiest thing in the world for us to go and chap the door and ask the club to if not totally fund this, then part fund it. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted this to be from this generation of Rangers supporters looking back and giving our thanks and giving these guys back a bit of dignity and respect. And it's just this generation saying to them, "Look, thanks. We can't thank you personally, but we're going to ensure that you won't be left lying in an unmarked plot."
And I think that is an important point. That we talk about the different generations coming after each other. It's really important for us to look back at not just the past teams, but the past supporters that follow these teams as well. I think that's a really important message, and I'm sure a lot of people who take the tour will take that message away. That it's important to keep telling the story of the Rangers teams and the people who followed Rangers as well, more importantly, because that's what any club's about, the fans first and foremost. So, going ahead to the 150th anniversary, we spoke about it quite a few times so far. That's a massive milestone. Also, there's been a lot of hype from surrounding the club, most notably around the new Edmonston House project that will include a museum, and I think rightly so, it's gathering a lot of hype. Before going to your plans, kind of what you guys have got coming up on the tour itself, do you think you'll incorporate the museum tour into the Founders Trail?
That's something that we'll speak to the club about and get their thoughts on it. I don't know at this stage how the club's going to split the stadium tour with the museum tour. If some objects are going to go across there on a kind of loaned basis to the museum, I really don't know. I would be guessing what their plans are for this, and whether we would then focus on, when we come back to Ibrox, doing the museum tour, or we would still go back. We would still get to the stadium. The stadium's got its magic, of course. We got in that marble staircase. We've got the entrance to that stadium is like none other world football. So my initial thoughts would be to keep it within the stadium. But again, it's something we'll get around the table with the club with near the time and get their thoughts on it. What do you think, Gordon?
Definitely. It's how they're going to do it. A few years back, done the Man United one, and you you start off in the museum and you can go around the museum, then your tour gets called for the stadium part. So you go away and do that, and you can go back to the museum. So I don't know whether the club's going to do something similar to that, whereas you start your day in, you go, well, your tour starts at 12 o'clock, so you need to be over. I don't know how they'll do it, whether they'll just keep it separate altogether as a museum tour and a stadium tour, or, so it'd be interesting to see what their thoughts of that is.
Just on the club's plans, is there anything you guys would like to see the club do to commemorate the 150th anniversary? Any ideas that you'd think would be a nice throwback to them, just as the main two guys that have been looking back into the history of the founding years?
Yeah, I think the first Old Firm game that we have at Ibrox next year, that me and Gordon should be included in the first team. Gordon should be Tom Barnes and I should be Moses Joe. I think that's a must.
I'd probably need to play a sweeper type role, by the way. I don't know if that fits into the formation. I'm sure the club have got plans, and we've had a couple of discussions with them, but we can't really expand on that just now. They have asked that we kind of keep it until things are finalised, kind of thing. So they have came and asked for our thoughts and a couple of things, and we've put them across, So, but again, it's still very much at discussion stage, But it's something really to look forward to. It was getting back. You get back to the 140th year. Gordon will remember this clearly. In 2012, when we'd been having discussions with Sandy Jardine, and our first ever game at Fletcher Hall was against Calendar, and there's still a football team in Calendar, the amateur or junior, but I went through to visit the guy through there, and the plan was to bring the Calendar team through to Fletcher's Hall, and there was going to be a select team. I think Mark Haitley, John Brown, etc. had put their name forward or had been approached to play in that game, and before we knew it, that was in February of 2012, and before we knew it, bang, Whitehead is in administration, and everything just collapsed. The idea of the Rangers team was the founders of the club obviously finished playing. They created an ancients team which raised money for charity. So you get guys like Tom Valance and George Gillespie, all these guys, and were playing these games. So their idea was to have a Rangers ancients team to play Calendar, and that sounds where John Brown and all that guys would come in.
So there was that kind of thing that was going on. And incredibly, we'd actually been asked up to Auchenhowie to meet Sandy, to have a discussion, a further discussion back in 2012. And just at that, we were actually sitting in an office up there, and just at that, the notification came through that the club was going into administration, and Sandy Jardine just turned grey. And he turned, I won't repeat on air exactly what he said, but wow. And that was it. We just knew then anything that the club had for going forward was going down the toilet very quickly. It was horrible, So that was 140th year. But I'm sure it'll be so much different. It'll be so much different next year, Colin.
I know it's all these kind of stories that you never really hear too much about. So this is the first time I've heard that we were planning these celebrations for the 140th anniversary. But it's just so much got ruined with that period, and it's a shame. But I suppose the club's back in the right hands and going in the right direction. So it's great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the plans for the new Emerson House and the museum, and I think are absolutely fantastic. And we're pushing forward. We've had those games there with Arsenal and Real Madrid. We've got the club and the support as a whole. I've got so much to look forward to. It's just absolute night and day, as we'll all know, to where we were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Definitely. It was really, seeing like that 2012 onwards, there was very few staff actually in the kind of admin team. Right, Ian? It was like trying to get things organised was just mental. It was really hard to.
People were just failing out. They're going to be to work with the Commonwealth Games, the organisation behind that. People were just jumping ship, and rightly so. They could also see their jobs disappearing. It's tragic.
Really, really, really dark times then.
Yeah.
Back on what I mentioned before about your plans for the 150th anniversary. I believe you've released a book a few years ago, and it's a new edition of this is coming out. Is that right?
Yeah. Do you want to crack on with that, Gordon?
Well, it's Gary sort of kind of floated the idea about the kind of a newer version. The original book, Gary done, we gave him extra information for that. And then he brought out a kind of updated version, which was the kind of current one, which is a lot better. But since then, I mean, we've got loads of wee bits and bobs that we've gave Gary to add into the book, and there's different things. So it's actually kind of almost a rewrite of the book as well. So it is actually different. We have got something for it that's kind of it's about a wow factor, but I don't really want to talk about that at the moment, if you know what I mean. But there's something in it there that's going to be fantastic. It's a new thing about the formation of the club and stuff like that as well. So it's going to be good. But the thing that's a wow factor, it's going to be cracking when that gets released.
Yeah, what we actually done, Colin, was we offered people the opportunity to place a dedication within the book. It's coming out. We asked that the dedications come in by the end of September, which is also this coming Wednesday night. So if anyone does want to place a dedication before Wednesday, can go onto my website. Gordon says it's on.
Yeah, it's I've actually tweeted today on my Twitter, and Ian's just probably retweeted it. But we've also put a blog out as well about how to get that dedication in the book. So if you look on my Twitter, it's Gordon at Founders Trail, isn't it? And I can't remember yours off by heart, Ian.
Yeah, Moonlight of 1872. Again, if it's not the dedication or after the book, we are confident that the book will be with us in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Certainly be there in time for Christmas. So there's an update in every chapter of the book that we've done, because, as I said, we continue to research, and there was more than enough there to warrant an update on it, and it will be a celebration of our 150th year, and that's the driving force behind the book.
And what's the book's title?
It'll just be the Gallant Pioneers. It's the Gallant Pioneers. It's just the 150 year edition.
Yeah, and John Brown's very kindly doing the forward for us. John Brown, of course, was the guy that stood in the steps at Ibrox, and John Brown was the guy that no one was wanting to listen to, you know. But John Brown knew exactly what was going on within our stadium and within our club, and we felt there was no one more fitting. When the club came out of the darkness and back into the light, when they're going to be celebrating their 150th year, we thought there was nobody more fitting to write the forward than Bomber, and he's very kindly done that for us. So
delighted with that.
That's great. So just to recap that, Gallant Pioneers 150th edition, and the links are on Twitter, but I'll include the links in the show's comments if you want.
If you could, that'd be brilliant.
Yep, and send over by Wednesday the 30th to the guys if you want any memorial.
Yeah. And going forward, we'll also continue doing our tours. We've got a couple next month in October that are sold out. We've got a couple of dates in November. We're going to be adding one for the beginning of December. Then we'll have our break over Christmas and New Year. We're back out doing our presentation evenings. These were initially aimed at supporters, clubs, and far-flung areas who obviously everything is geared for these guys, from like Aberdeen, Fort William, Inverness to get to Ibrox and match day and get back. And it's a bit much to expect them to come back down the following day or stay overnight just to do the Founders Trail. So we thought we could come up with the idea of a presentation, which we do via screen and projector, and we take it out to them and give them the full story. So we're back out doing that. We're through in Falkirk for the Jason Kerr Loyal on Saturday night, and we've got bookings coming up with the Brigton Loyal, and we've got one down in Comores. So we're going to be expanding on that as we go forward, you know. And once obviously restrictions are now lifted, Colin, you know, and it lets us get back into the pubs and social clubs with the presentation evening. So that will be the way forward for us. We'll expand on that and we'll obviously be back. We'll be back on the road as often as we can next year, celebrating the 150th year.
That really brings me to my last question on the presentation nights and the road shows. I think that's amazing that you'll take the story to supporters clubs, because as you say, like, it can be a long trek for fans from up north or anywhere in Scotland or the UK to come to Glasgow for twice in the one weekend, for example. So it's amazing. How much interest do you get for overseas with anything like roadshow or the tour related?
We've had a couple of tentative inquiries. I mean, as far as going over the sea, we've certainly been to Northern Ireland a few occasions, but we've had a couple of tentative inquiries, from abroad, but nothing concrete. Something came in from Germany, and Dubai and Australia, and a couple of guys from NARS have contacted us over the years, but there's been nothing concrete as far as taking it out to those far flung places. But yeah, it's that, as I say, that's what it's aimed for. The trips we get across to Northern Ireland are absolutely fantastic.
We've been down south quite a few times as well. There's some great support in there, Wales and England and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Plymouth and Thringston, absolutely fantastic. Corby,
and Cardiff as well for the boys there. It wasn't a presentation, but it was good to get you meet the guys.
Yeah, it's so it's fantastic taking out. Of course, we had a night in the Viceroy a few years ago.
Oh my God, that was
the late Peter Derrick. He was what character Peter was. He organised it, and I don't know if you were there that night, but he managed to get about 40 people into that back room.
So to be snug.
It was absolutely astonishing.
They were hanging for the lampshades and everything that night. It was brilliant. I was absolutely roasting.
I'm
sure Ian did it in his underpants. Was that warm?
But to actually take it, the presentation into what, of course, was Tom Valance's club restaurant, that was an extra special night. And the Viceroy, I love going into the Viceroy for a pint. It's it really is a step back in time, and it's managed to retain, that feeling about the place,
Nah, it really has. It's a bit trendy for my liking nowadays with Scott and Robin looking after it. They now do cocktail. I thought the only cocktail you used to get in the Viceroy was a lager tops, but
I actually seen a wee video that they're advertising it, and they've actually got a kind of Tom Valance figure in the background as well, which is pretty cool,
Yeah. It's lovely looking pub nowadays to add to the history, so we'll give it that. So I think that's probably a nice place to round it off, gents. But before we do, I just want to thank you again for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And before you go, please feel free any last messages to the listeners, and more importantly, where they can find you in the Founders Trail. Gordon, I'll start with you.
We're obviously on Twitter, Facebook. I'll send you over the things. I've not actually got them to hand, by the way.
I'll put you in the spot there, but I'll post them.
I know, I was like there.
The website's thefounderstrail.co.uk, mate, and they'll get us on there, and we update our tour dates regularly on there. And as you say, like we'll put new dates on. Personally, I would just like to thank my fellow range supporters for supporting not only the Founders Trail, but of course the Restoration Project and my presentation evenings throughout the last few years, and hopefully that will continue for the years to come, because you said yourself, at the start, it's an incredible story that has to be passed on to the next generation, and this is the way that we'll do it. It's always a joy, whether it's on the tour bus or at these presentation evenings, and looking out and seeing youngsters there, and you can tell the ones that are tuned in and are listening, and it's so important that they take that story forward.
I think that'll take us to a close there. Thanks again, gentlemen, and listeners. Thank you as always for coming back and listening. If you haven't taken the tour, do what I'm going to do. Sign up, please. Spread the word and get yourselves on it. Take care.
Thanks very much.